First mile is always the toughest. You know how much further you got to go. Wales Coastal Park really pushed me to my limits. Sort of like hit home. Like one by one, we realised it must have been stolen. But you've run 135 miles to that point when you turn around. I could feel the blood move around my head. When it does that, you start to think, shit, what damage am I doing? I almost died. I ended up in hospital with a thing called rhabdomyolysis. My kidneys were failing. I was like third stage kidney failure. The one time I've had to cuddle a Fanta bottle with like boiling hot water in it. But it also taught me that DNFs are not the end of the world.
Welcome back to the Adventure Athletes podcast. I've been super excited to both record and release this episode with Rhys Jenkins. Now, if you don't know Rhys, he is an insane ultra athlete. Here's a quick list of some of the things that he's ticked off and we speak about in the podcast. So he's completed the Badwater race across America. He's run from Land's End to John O'Groats, and if that's not hard enough, he ticked off the 3 peaks while doing it. He ran 2,000 miles from Boston to Austin in America, and he had the fastest known time for the Welsh Coastal Path. So he shares this incredible story with us, how he plans these challenges, and setting up his own races like the Pegasus series, a series of races ranging from 30 to 50 miles, the Epona 100 miler and the Wild Horse 200 miler. So if you're looking to push yourself that bit further next year, definitely check out those races. Now, with Adventure Athletes, we've just released our own Learn to Climb courses run by a trained rock climbing instructor. They're going to be out in Easter, but you can book on them now. This is for anyone, no matter what your experience in climbing, you could definitely get something out of this. We've got gift cards on the lead up to Christmas, which you can use on massage or any of our planning and programming. We've got a bunch of upcoming giveaways and some really big news coming soon. So make sure you check us out at Adventure Athletes on Instagram and at our website www.adventureathletes.co.uk. But for now, enjoy the podcast. So, our last guest has left a question for you, and he knows you.
Mr. Graham McKenna.
Yeah. So, he's left, what race, past, present, or future, would you like to do, and why?
What race, past, present, or future, which I'd like to do? In the past, I would have loved to have run across America when they actually had an organised race, a foot race. That would have been really cool, but it doesn't exist anymore. I think the closest thing you've got is Ram, which is on a bike, which is interesting to me. I'd love to have a crack at that. If I went on about the list, which I've got on my phone of events, we'd be here all day. Like, genuinely, I keep adding ones like every other day, and my wife gets sick of it. And then I get nervous about saying what I'm going to do because I don't know what I've actually signed off with Keris, my wife. So I'll just be very I'll just blasé and just brush over it, really. I'm affiliated, I absolutely love Badwater over in the USA. Don't ask me why. Being a Welshman coming from the valleys, it's just...
it's like complete opposite, really, isn't it?
Complete opposite. I think it's like, I shouldn't be there. I just absolutely love the lure of running in heat. I find it like an ultimate test. It's the ultimate, I guess, equaliser, because if you go off with a huge high heart rate at a really fast pace, you're going to blow up. And it's just like managing yourself, and it's just it's a bit like the rabbit and the hare and the tortoise. It's going back and forth, and I guess doing the event itself, I've only ever done it I've done it twice. Like, finished it once, DNF'd once, and then I've done it 4 or 5 times by myself, just going out there and running it, which was pretty cool and special because there's nobody else out there. And I think with that event in particular, or that challenge, it's called the Badwater Solo Crossing. It's at night time where it gets you, because you just see all the night sky, and obviously being quite close to Brecon you get it, but over there it's just on a different level completely, and you've got the chances of like bumping into wildlife as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Didn't you do a double Badwater as well?
God, you've done your research.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a double Badwater the first time I went out there was 2014, so it must have been 2015. I was like, oh, I know, I want to go back, but I want another reason for going back, and it was like, okay, let's double it. And there's a few people that have done, less people have doubled it than obviously done it individually, soloed it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see whether it's possible for me. I knew it was possible, but I wanted to see whether it was possible for me. And that, my God, it took the best part of 4 days to go back and forth. The heart-wrenching moment was when you actually got to the point where you finished the year previously, and you had to turn around and get the hell off the mountain. But you've run 135 miles to that point when you turn around. And you've got a 13-mile descent, which goes down about like 4,000 feet. So you're just running downhill for 13 miles. It sounds fun, but it's not when you've got 135 miles in your legs and you're literally aching. You're like cursing every step as you're going down this hill. And then it was just, my dad was my sole crew for the return crossing on that. And it was literally me and him for a wild adventure. Like on the way back, we were running through like dry lightning thunderstorms. Like you could see them down the valley, and they weren't anywhere near to you. But in Death Valley, everything like it echoes, and like you can feel it in your bones. And there was like dust storms. We were having to like pull the car over. I would jump in the car, and we would just literally stay still for like 2 hours, waiting for it to blow over, because you just don't want to run in that crap, really. And it was amazing. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I guess it got to the end of that and wondered what if and what I could do next over there. And it's just, I want to go back and see how far I could go in Death Valley. Maybe not double it, but a bit more than that. We'll see.
That sounds like insane to me. Like,
oh man, there's so much. I just, if I went back, I'd love to like do a quad crossing where you do like 4 times, and then actually, if you did that, would you go back and could you do it like 10 times back and forth? That's where my mind's gone with it. And then I've actually thought, well, you could do a triathlon out there, and people are going, no, you can't. It's Death Valley. There's no water. There is water. There's a motel, so you could technically do like the world's hottest iron. You can't even call it an Ironman, can you? That's a brand. World's hottest triathlon. That would be pretty cool. So it's a wicked playground, and it's just I love the place. If you ever get a chance, get over there.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I found really interesting when I was looking up like a bit more about you is your first ultra was it running across America?
Yeah.
That's your first ultra.
Yes. My first ever ultra was running across America.
Now it's in 2010, wasn't it?
2010.
Yeah.
I think I did like the Llanelli half, like in 2007 maybe. Went back and did it a year later, and then signed up to go to Las Vegas to run the marathon. And it was mainly just to go over there with my friends and ran a marathon as a side My God, went over there, and I was quite naive. I was like, oh, Las Vegas is going to be lovely, like temperature, winter time. No, it was Baltic. It was absolutely freezing. I took my gloves off in the first mile and regretted it from like mile 2 onwards. It was like, I was bitterly cold. Got to like mile, 22, and like my hamstring went, and I hobbled the last 4 miles. And that was my first, I think I've only ever done like 3 organised marathons, and that was the furthest I'd gone before we went and jumped in at the deep end over the USA. And it was a moment of like whether we'd sink or swim. Didn't know what the hell we were doing. It took more time running it than we did planning it. We blagged sponsors like Puma and Bulldog. It's the men's grooming product.
Yeah.
We had these brands like, give us some cash to go over there and like help fund the adventure, which was pretty cool. But we didn't have a clue whether we'd be able to make it. Puma's running kit at the time wasn't really running kit. Like the waterproof jackets they gave us were sailing jackets. Like they were like wearing a sailing jacket for like 30 miles each day, and you're sweating inside it and it's peeing outside. You are wetter from sweating inside the jacket than if you just let the rain hit you. And they were just, the kit wasn't really made for running across America in. And by America, people always joke. I mean, they say, well, we didn't actually run across America. We ran from Boston to Austin, which is like 2,000 miles. But it was a big old adventure, which took, I think it was like 75 days or something. Just back-to-back torment on the body. When we first started off, at the first marathon, the first day, I spent the evening, I went into a stand-up shower and I sat down with my hand in my arm, like literally just in the fetal position like this, and questioning my life decisions as to how the hell am I going to get through this. The body was like really paying for it, and we spent the first week just breaking. I think it went on a little bit longer than that, and then injuries started coming into it, and like shin splints and your calf aching, and you're just not feeling in a great place. So we just realised we couldn't continue in that trend, because we would end up burying ourselves and the challenge just would never get completed. So we just did the one thing we knew we could do, and we just took a recovery day. We just took a day off, took ourselves away from running completely, and just relaxed in a hotel or at a friend's and just had some food and just tried to extract our minds from what we were going to have to go back to. And I think that recovery day turned into like 2 recovery days, and then we just sort of bit the bullet and went back out running, but we didn't go back up to like a marathon distance a day. We just did like half marathon, sort of the body felt, and next day we'd increase it, and then by, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later we were back up to where the distances where we needed to be, and we actually surpassed the marathon distance. We were running like ultras each and every day, and I think we peaked at like 61 miles one day, and I know it's 61 miles because we did it on my dad's 61st birthday, and it was just like to celebrate his birthday. That's the only reason we did it. Majority of the days we were running like 30 to 35 miles, and we weren't going any further than that. We just knew what our bodies were capable of, and then being able to wake up the next day and repeat the pattern. And we'd also built into it, so our weeks weren't 7 days, our weeks were 8 days. So we would run for 7 days and break on the 8th, run for 7 days, break on the 8th, and having that carrot at the end of each 7-day period was just everything you aimed for, because you knew on that day you didn't have to move, you could eat whatever the hell you wanted to. It was just absolute blessing. You just felt like you really deserved that day of just not doing anything, but they would go by so quickly. And like if you had like injuries you were trying to fix and whatnot, a day allows you to put plasters over them, it doesn't allow it to fully recover. But some days we would just walk and help the body do like active recovery rather than just pounding away on the concrete.
Yeah.
We didn't know any of this when we set off. We learnt it as we went, and we still don't know a lot of things, but that challenge in particular sort of set me up from moving forward from there. I picked up a lot of my trade during those 75 days when you're on the open road. And it was 2010, like you said, didn't really have Google Maps, or I don't think they were that great anyway. It didn't have like these amazing GPS devices which are like telling you which way to. No, our crew would literally stand on the edge of a corner and tell us we had to turn. Like, that's how we had our directions. Or they'd write them on the back of a napkin, and you'd hold the napkin and then hope to God that you didn't lose the napkin and you'd find your way. We never got lost, and they did an excellent job of looking after us. Like truly, it was 3 runners and 2 crew, but being with the same people for that long period of time, living out of a hotel, not knowing where you're going to stay each night, you live out of each other's pockets. And it's quite intense. So some days you just, I'm sick to death of you, I'm not going to speak to you. And then the next day, like, be best buddies, you put your arm around him, you'd be laughing all day. It's the roller coaster of emotions you experience across that time period with being in that intense situation with other people. It builds skill set within yourself, which you can carry on forward.
Yeah. So what made you decide to do that, having never done anything like that before? Because that's like quite an undertaking. Not many people would look and be like, yeah, I'm just going to go for a 2,000-mile run.
I don't know, I think naivety. Having a bit of an ego, I'm not entirely sure with how I do know. My friend, my best friend, Rusty Tolliver, I met him working over at a summer camp, and that's when I really got into running. It was like 2006. And we'd wake up early, and he just sort of showed me how cool it was to just run around a track in the morning, get your exercise done nice and early. And I noticed that running actually impacted team sports, because I was a team sport player moving forward. But skip forward 4 years, and we both had a taste of adventure because we worked over in America, working at a summer camp, and we'd travel at the end of each season. And then by 2010, we'd stopped doing the summer camps. But we still had that best friendship, that connection. And both of us separately had been working on or coming up with an idea of a big, like, long distance run. And I, being a Welshman over here, mine was like, let's run across America. And he was like, well, I'm actually thinking about running from Boston to Austin, because he was living at Boston at the time and he was going to move back to Austin. He's originally from Austin. And he was like, well, I want to run home. And I was like, that's a pretty cool idea. Let's just do that. And plus, it's 1,000 miles less of what I was thinking about doing. So it's easier, if you could say that. And I spoke to my brother. My brother was interested, so we got him involved. And two of my best friends, John and Adam, were the crew that were going to join us on it. But if you come back to your question about why we did it, it was the sense of adventure. Whether we could actually achieve something like that, seeing a new country, meeting new people, doing something good for charity. It was back in the day, I think we did it for 3 charities in total. It was like Help for Heroes, British Heart Foundation, and my God, what was the other one now? I can't even remember. It was a Texas charity which Rusty had picked, and I think it was Texas Teens Against Cancer. And we just went out and we had those. Like, they'd be giving us they'd be getting in touch each day, and it wasn't like you had Instagram at that time. It was like emails, and you still got the emails which you could still read through, and like they'd send you like good luck messages, or you'd have people getting in touch saying thank you for doing this and representing our community. So charity was a big reason why we did it as well.
Yeah. So is it sort of the same when you're looking for challenges now, because you've done like countless challenges since then?
Yeah, I think wanting to do something good for charity will always be a fundamental reason why I do these things. It gives you a great reason for being out there, but it also gives you that great layer of resilience when you want to give up. You can think about why you're out there and why you're fundraising, why actually you have a choice why you're there, whereas the people you're fundraising for usually don't have a choice and they're suffering. And it's just something whereby I'm not the richest, I'm not the smartest, but I have a goddamn, ability to be able to hang on when you're feeling like crap and just keep on holding on. And people tend to donate when you do stuff like that. Getting older, I think just exploring new places and being able to tick stuff off, saying that you've been there, you've done that, you've achieved it. And it's not, it is actually, I've got literally an endless list of stuff which keeps getting added to, and I referred to it earlier on, like every couple of days you come across these new challenges. But I think being 2010, so 13 years, I think coming up to like 14 years of doing it, you've seen it change quite a bit with the amount of people coming into the sport, which is cool. But like, there's still these core challenges which have been around since like the 1980s. Running across America for me is, yes, I did Boston to Austin, but running across America is going from LA to New York, and I would love to do that at some point. Running across Canada, I'd love to do that. Have you ever heard of a chap called Terry Fox?
No.
Check him out, he's literally incredible. So he ran across Canada, I think it was like the late 1990s or something like that. But the guy he is an inspiration to me, whereby he had cancer and he actually ended up losing one of his limbs from it. And he ran across Canada with a prosthetic, but it was a point where people didn't really. Like, he had children going up to him saying, "Mummy, that is so ugly," and like really being victimised, and like people just being fucking horrible to him, and he just kept on going and going. And there's a documentary called Into the Wind. I think it's 20 minutes long. It's an ESPN documentary, but it just goes into detail of his struggles and why he was out there. And unfortunately, he never actually finished a run. He picked up cancer again and died. So yeah, it's like, for me, it's just something which Terry Fox is a running hero of mine, and I'd love to go over there and run in his footsteps and see what it's like, and hopefully achieve crossing Canada at some point. But we are talking years down the line. I've got a 2-year-old. I want to enjoy fatherhood for a while before I disappear for God knows how long that would take.
Yeah. What would you say out of, because you've done 60 odd challenges now?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, what would you say is the hardest one you've done and why?
The hardest one I've done and why? I've got a few hard ones, and for different reasons, really. Stuff which usually catches you out. Wales Coastal Path was just, it really pushed me to my limits. That was 870 miles in like 20 and a half days or something. And by the end of it, the last 3 days, they were just a complete blur. The lights were on, but nobody was home. I was just moving forward, and I was lucky enough to be joined by a documentary team like during that challenge. And it was like when COVID kicked off and everybody was losing work and whatnot, and they just went, "Oh, you're an interesting character. Let's follow you for doing this challenge." And they did that. But watching it back and seeing like what a shadow, like just like it was like a shell of what you usually are, just struggling through.
Yeah.
And mentally, physically, like Keris, my wife, was my support crew as well, and she was struggling because she's got to look after a grown man. She's got to organise food. She's got to organise accommodation. Then she's got to go from checkpoint to checkpoint. She's really got to look after somebody. So she had to have people look after her while she got this thing. And it's just like a huge team of people working together. There's a lot of things which made that challenge very difficult. Don't get me wrong, very rewarding when you got across that finish line. like 2 or 3 steps away. I didn't even know how I'd react. Like, you know, some people like plan how they didn't even have a clue what I was going to do. I just knew I wanted to hug Keris, and like when I got to the finish, like raw emotion just kicked in, and I just did like some stupid like power punch up into the air or something, and it was just like uncontrollable.
Yeah.
It wasn't scripted. It was just literally that's how I felt, and that's what took over. And I fell into like Keris' arm and picked her up. But the question was about what was difficult. Iceland, running across Iceland, that caught us out quite drastically. We picked April, which is not a great time of year to run across Iceland. And we went from east to west, so we were running into a headwind pretty much the whole time. The route we'd chosen, we hadn't really spent a lot of time picking the route, and it was terrible. It was flat. There was no protection from the wind, so you're just having this really fast wind hit you each and every day, and we're doing like 50 miles a day. But having that relentless just pushback whilst you're trying to move forward is demoralising as hell. There was a point where, well, there was 5 runners and 1 support crew vehicle. Over 50 miles, you're going to break, like, even if you're a mile per hour difference, that's a huge gap at some point. And the support vehicle disappeared for like maybe 2-3 hours, and I didn't see anybody, and I was freezing cold, it was pissing down with rain. Like, you know, when you're getting close to hypothermic, or you feel like you're getting there. My body was just desperate for just to get out of these elements and just calm down. And I felt like it was going to get quite dangerous, and I felt sort of started to fear for the worst. And I was contemplating just ducking down by the sides of the road and like just laying in the dirt and trying to get some sort of shelter from the weather, which would have been a daft idea anyway. And then all of a sudden the crew vehicle came up, and luckily they just flung the doors open. I jumped in, and that's the one time I've had to cuddle Fanta bottle with like boiling hot water in it. Like I was just like that shivering in the back of this caravan, just like trying to get some sort of life back inside of me. Badwater, Death Valley, like doing those crossings back and forth. The double was just an absolute drag. It went on forever. The heat, I've experienced it up to like 52, and I'm not built to be a runner. I'm quite, like, what's the word? I was going to say stacked then, that's a bit of a thing. That's an over-exaggeration. I'm big boned, should we say. And I'm just not, I love the heat, but like my body just, I could feel the blood move around my head. And when it does that, you start to think, shit, what damage am I doing? And that, I guess, is the polar opposite from Iceland, where it was freezing cold. Another one, completely random. We were doing so I do cycling as well, which not a lot of people know. I used to anyway, until I realised I was terrible at it. We cycled, so we went to Rome to start this charity cycle, and we all got out of the vehicle, and it was a relay. So it was like me, you, and then there was another 2 people that were going to do the cycle. We were going to go round the clock until we got to our destination, and which was Paris, I think. And we went to the Colosseum. The one guy was dressed up in lycra. He had the bike. We had taken all these touristy photos. There's a photo of us all smiling. All the while, our vehicle was getting stolen from us. We didn't realise this. So we walked back to where we thought we were going for the support crew vehicle, and it just wasn't there. We're like, oh, we're in Rome. We've obviously parked it in a place, and we just don't know where we've left it. So after an hour of walking around, it sort of like hit home. Like one by one, we just went, where's the vehicle? And then we realised it must have been stolen. But whilst that's going on, we've got the other guy cycling off down the road, and he's just gone completely. So we're like, so he thinks we're all fine, and we're just following him. We weren't. We realised the van had been stolen with everything in it, so passports, bags. Like the only things we had were what were in our pockets, and there was only one guy in cycling kit, so we had one set of kit, one bike. Didn't know what the hell to do, so we just went to the airport. We tried finding the police station, we just couldn't find one which was open. And we rung home, and I was like to my dad, I was like, oh, we fucked up. Somebody has stolen our support vehicle. We don't have anything to carry on the challenge. God knows what the insurance company are going to do with this vehicle. Like the rental company are going to go ballistic at us. And he's like, well, you're an idiot. There'll be a tracker on there. We're like, oh, right, okay. So we got the tracker location, and the first thing you do is you want to get your stuff back. So we just went straight there and found it, and they'd actually like buried the van underneath like foliage and whatnot and tried to hide it behind like a dustbin. Got there and they gutted the van completely. There was like nothing inside it. We were like, we can't do this. And we told the charity what had gone on, and they did like a social media post like saying it's not happening, because obviously they'd been robbed, which is what had happened. We made the decision then overnight to actually continue. We got somebody else to fly out and help us, and like a couple of days later we were sharing cycling kit. and one bike between us. Like, if you've ever had done cycling, which I've noticed your bike downstairs,
Yeah.
like wearing like the same bib shorts, but sharing them with people is freaking disgusting. And we did that for like 4 days. We ended up cycling to Paris, like in a non-stop relay format. But that was like one of those challenges which I didn't expect that to be the toughest part of it, and it really like hit us for a 6. But the best thing of it was, up until that point, we'd raised like £500. Within 24 hours, that fundraising had gone up to like £10,000 for charity.
Oh wow!
And to date, like, that's the most like I've ever seen it go up so quickly. It's just incredible, the amount of people that are like almost standing up for us by donating. It was very sweet and humbling that people would do that for us.
Yeah.
So in that testing moment, I got inspired also from just the amount of, I guess, that really showed me the level of support that you get on this. And you may not sometimes see it, but it is there. And I think when you need it, you just tap into it and it's there to help you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think the question was, what was the toughest? All of them. The first mile is always the toughest. I don't know why. For me, it's just, you know how much further you got to go.
Yeah.
The final mile is always fun because I'm done, I can finish. I got a weird mindset.
See, I think I'm the opposite, because every time I've done my challenges, I start off and I feel great and I'm like, yeah, excited for the adventure. And then by the end, like when I did my ultra on the weekend, like the last 4 miles was just like a death march. It was like, I'm completely done. Get to the finish line, there's people there being like, woo! And I'm just there like, no, please don't. I just want to sit down.
For me, it is literally the first mile. It's just mentally, if it's a 2,000 mile run, you're like, I gotta go like I've never 1,999 miles in that direction.
Yeah.
And it's like that almost like feeling of an abyss which is following you, and if you stop, you're just gonna fall, and that's the end of the challenge. It's like a weird little thing I have. But yeah, even on the Wales coastal path, like on the final day is where like I actually found speed. I don't have speed. And I was like running 8-minute miles on Newport flatlands. All right, it is flat. Don't get me wrong. But the people I was with, like, I don't know, it was just, I hit this stride and I had this realisation I was getting close to the end, and I was still like 20 miles away, so there was a lot of gap between me and the finish line. But I was just having fun, and I was like, I'm going to go faster and faster, and then I started to see the guys that I were with losing their breath, and I was like, I'm going to keep going. I was like, I've had this, I was finally being able to turn the screw. As all the way through that challenge I've been suffering, but now I was actually being able to just enjoy it and just like get out there and run. And I ran like 8-minute miles, which aren't crazy fast, but
after running like the length of Wales,
it was quite cool. And I had a chap called Matthew Pritchard, which I'm sure you're familiar with. He's done a load of crazy stuff anyway. And like somebody went to me, God, you managed to make Pritchard shut up. Like, that's impressive. Like, Pritchard's an amazing guy. He's really cool, and he does all these challenges himself. Like, he really gets the mindset behind it, and like even just having him there to run, like he ran a couple of days with me. It's like a shot of adrenaline in your arm. It's just like, that's another thing where you get with these challenges, the people that come along to see you. Some of them you know, some of them you don't know, and you get to hear stories. Like, I heard your story earlier on. It's like a really cool arena to meet new people and get inspired and sort of obviously lift off that as well.
Yeah. How would you sort of advise someone going about starting a challenge? Like, if there's people out there that want to push themselves more but they don't know like what challenge to set, how to go about it, how does fundraising work? Like, what's your advice for them?
Get yourself a Keris. Keris is my wife and she helps you plan everything. What would I say? When it comes to challenge, I'd say commit. Genuinely, once you commit, then you have to build everything else off the side of it, and you need to go into the fundraising, you need to start planning and whatnot. But committing to it is usually the biggest step. You'll get a lot of people who will sometimes reach out and they'll say, I'm going to do this challenge, and sometimes they just don't follow through with it. I don't know why you don't follow through with it, but maybe it's just life circumstances. Or once you step over that committal line, your mindset changes completely, and the best things I've ever done, I've just committed and then gone straight into like the 2,000 mile run across America. Didn't know whether I could do it, but we just committed and then we had to go through with it. Plan. Like I just joked around with then that Keris is my wife, but she's also like a key cog in this whole thing. Like, she helps me plan it down to detail. Before I met her, I was just quite lawless with my approach. So I just throw myself into it and see what, like you said, you'd run the Cardiff half off no training. Like, that's the sort of thing I would do. I used to drink, and I would go out drinking and then go and run a marathon the next day. So it's not good for your body. But being able to plan allows for then you can be adaptable during the challenge itself. Like, you'll have a plan, and usually by day one it goes to shit. But then actually having that plan allows you to sort of build off it, and you can always adapt the plan. It's just having that to build, like have that there, because it's like a pillar of any challenge. Fundraising, that's something which I found has become more and more difficult over the years, and it's a case of, with me in particular, it's having to like do something maybe a bit tougher to try and encourage people to donate to certain causes. I always do it for a cause that I really connect with, something which I buy into, which something which I really want to help and support. And I think picking the right charity is fundamental if you're doing fundraising. Do your research into the charities. Like, the ones which you're seeing are the ones with the biggest marketing budgets, which then means they've got the most money, which maybe they don't need your fundraising. So do your research. The charity you mentioned to me earlier on, I'd never heard of, but I'm going to go and research it now because it sounds like a great cause, you know. It's just, find the charities which are small, niche, because if you can raise £1,000 for them, that's going to make a massive difference to them. If you went and did it for a bigger global charity, it's just going to go into the pot, and it's not really going to, you're not going to see where it goes. Like, there's loads of local charities, especially around South Wales, and if your audience is South Wales based, there's so many great causes out there which deserve more limelight, because with the challenges in particular, with the Wales Coastal Path, for example, I wanted to run it. I was supposed to be running Badwater, but that got canned because of COVID and international flights. And they didn't even cancel the race because of COVID. They cancelled the race. I wouldn't have been able to get there, but they cancelled the race because there was a huge earthquake at the finish line, and it sent boulders the size of cars throwing down off the mountain. It was just crazy to see like the photos and the videos from it. But what was my point? Wales Coastal Path. So we said we were going to do it. Cool. And then it was nice to go after the fastest known time and the record on it, but that was never the key factor for me. We used that to, like, I guess, get more attention to fundraise for charity. Like, I didn't know whether I could achieve it, but I was going to have a good go at it. I'm quite stubborn, so I thought like I could get close to it. But when you start talking about stuff like that and make it a bit more unique, people tend to pay a little bit more attention. And once you get their attention, you just need to then show them why you're out there running and explain the charity to people. A key charity which me and Keris try to fundraise for each year, and by charity I mean cause, because there's multiple charities which help the cause, is child abuse. So unfortunately, as a child, Keris, my wife, was abused, and it's something which by each and every year we will try and help a charity which tries to tackle child abuse. It's one of those sad things where the press and the media, like, you're doing an interview or something like that. I don't get many interviews, don't get me wrong, but like they'll put the hand in the thing. Do you want that included? And it's just like, yes, because child abuse is why I'm out here running. And the more you talk about it, the less it lives in the dark. You bring it forward into the light, and people then become familiar with it. And if they're familiar with it, they can spot stuff. They can talk about it. It makes people feel more comfortable. 2021, we ran the Joggle, which is John O'Groats to Land's End. It's like 1,000 miles. I threw in doing the 3 peaks as well, which is Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike and Snowdon. And one thing we did not see coming from doing that challenge was we had survivors of child abuse come out and run with us. And they were people we knew. And then once they were out there running, they felt in a safe environment, and then they revealed their story to you. It was like a side product which completely, wow, it just took the whole challenge for me and Keris to a whole new level. It was something which we never even dreamed about happening, but people came out, and that's why we're out there, to people to talk about, and to have those survivors talking to us about it is like, that's the end product for us. That's what we wanted. And yes, I do it for multiple charities, but I always try to do one at least every year for child abuse.
Yeah, that is incredible, honestly. And then just like, the more we're talking and the more you're throwing out all these other challenges you've done, like, I don't think people understand how much you've actually gone out and done these things. So if there's anyone to listen to their advice, it's going to be yours.
That's very sweet of you, mate. Thank you.
No worries. So then, moving on from your challenges, you've also started setting up your own events. So you've got Pegasus, and then you've got the Epona and Wild Horse. Can you talk us through those?
Yeah, Pegasus has been going since 2018. We originally set it up to help people get into ultra running, give them a safe, supportive environment, which was encouraging. We don't like all this like toxic masculinity you get at some other places. It's just like, we want people to enjoy it. One way we try to counteract that is by eliminating cut-off times. If you eliminate that time pressure. People then can actually slow down, they can take in the views. They're usually running in a beautiful place and they can actually admire what they're doing rather than stressing and looking at their watch. Like you said a couple of years ago, you're doing an ultra where you were like cutting off by like 1 minute. It was very close, and I've been cut out of races before by missing it by minutes as well. So it's just something which we created our own thing. Yes, it's an ultra trail running business, but it's there to help people get into the sport. Then during COVID, I got really annoyed. I went out for like a 10-mile run, and yes, there's long distance races out there. There wasn't a 200-mile foot race in Wales, and I was like, surely there needs to be one. And by the time I got back from that 10-mile run, I had a rough route in my head. I had the brand name, I had an idea of what logo I wanted, and within a week we were selling tickets for the event. Like, genuinely, I got back and then told Karis about it. She was like, that's cool, but we got a load of other things going on. We got 6 races with the other thing. I was like, yeah, cool. And then within 7 days, we had the logo, we had the website, everything was going. And then she was like, crap, now we got to make it work. And I was like, yeah, we'll make it work, it'll be fine. Right? And we do. And so Wild Horse is the brand, and it's a 200-mile foot race across South Wales. It is non-stop, but we do offer the chance for sleep in certain checkpoints, should we say. So it's up to the runner how they approach it. And the idea is to open the door to 200-mile foot races. Because, yes, it's a difficult challenge, but every challenge is achievable if you go with it, the right approach, the right training, and the right mindset. Like, mindset comes into this game so much. And then last year we created a 100-mile foot race, which is called Epona, and that's over like in the Black Mountains, like around by Abergavenny and Crickall. It's a standalone event. It's awesome. It's where we live. So we feel we've created an event which is like running in our own back garden. Like, we know that we've got famous routes that are around the like Offers Dyke, the Beacons Way, and we do incorporate those into the route itself, but we've taken little diversions off to show people these beauty spots which nobody knows about. We've taken people off to give them the viewpoints of Sugarloaf Mountain. We've really tailor-made it to like, it's a local event, but it's truly there to showcase Wales. It's really, it's pretty cool. So we got those 3 brands underneath. Yeah, we had to get serious this year, so we've got a thing called Stable Adventures, which sounds weird saying, but it's like Epona, Pegasus and Wild Horse just underneath one bracket, should we say. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, it sort of lets you branch out a bit more then and add more to it, I guess.
Yeah, it's just easier to control and look after, because when I create these things, I usually just get them going, and Karis is like, she tries to calm me down, and yeah, she does calm me down on some stuff, and then we work great. We're like yin and yang, basically.
Yeah. So how do you actually go about, like, coming up with a race and, like, organising it? Like, there's so much to it that I just don't understand, and I just want to know more about.
Yeah, there is a lot to it which people don't see, and it is a year-long job. And luckily, it is my sole focus. I can focus on the 3 brands, the 3 races, and we try our best to improve it each and every year and improve the runner experience. Because one of the other reasons we got into it is because we didn't feel the aftercare and the runner experience was there. This is obviously 2018 now, not too long ago, but we just felt we could do a nice job of it. And when it comes to the actual organisation of things, like the logistics behind it, is, especially like a 200-mile foot race, it is bloody tiring. I mean, obviously just the 5 days alone, they have 120 hours to run it. That's 120 hours where we need to be on our A game. We need to be looking after people. We need to be tapping into our skill set to make sure that the runners are safe, but they're also having a challenging adventure out there within like a supportive community. Because a lot of people, I think, actually, no, there is a good credit out there for volunteers. Like, a lot of people realise now how much volunteers make events, and our events are cool, they're brilliant, but they are completely elevated by the volunteers. So without volunteers, your event will crumble, and you need to have the right mix of people with experience, but you also need to be helping people learn how to deal with other people, because you want to keep educating people. That you don't, we'll have new volunteers come along, and we'll purposely team them up with volunteers that we've had from previous years, just so they can pass on the whole, I don't know, ethos of business, because we can't be at each and every checkpoint as much as we wish we could. Pegasus, Wild Horse and Epona, it's literally just me and Karis. We're the only 2 that are actually invested like in the business itself. The logistics side of things, like, you have to order food, and you have to predict like how many people you're going to have coming in. Like, I think usually we have like a dropout rate before the event, so not during the. Our finish rate is really, really high, and it's because we feel that we look after people and we try our best to get them through I'm going to say ordeal. It's not an ordeal. It's like you choose to be there. It's an adventure. But like trying to predict and like get a bulk load of food for people, and you know there's a certain percentage that aren't going to show up on the day, but you still need to cover for them. Or water. Like the cardinal rule, never ever run out of water at jet point, and you have to do the maths right, because if you get it wrong, people are going to not have hydration, which is like a fundamental part to finishing an ultramarathon.
Yeah.
And you have like these horror stories from these bigger multinational organisations, which, I don't know, it's like their marketing's brilliant, but then actually you go down and you dig down into the race experience and you hear people saying that they've run out of water at a jet point. You're like, that's just one of the fundamental things you just don't do. And then you talk about the marketing and trying to get people to come along to the event itself. We don't try to force ourselves down people's throat. We just try to do like an honest, good job of our events, and we just feel that our runners will speak for us, and our runners will pass on reviews, they will do race reports, they will talk to other people about us. And I think that's, if I'm going to go and run an event, it's mainly because I've spoken to somebody else that's done it and they've told me about their experience, and you know what you're going into. Like Badwater, for example, I've never been over there until Death Valley, but I spoke to a lot of people before I did just to get an idea of it, and I still didn't know that bloody thing was hilly. Like genuinely, I went into it thinking it was just desert, it's going to be hot, it's going to be my hardest challenge, and now there's like 3 mountain ranges you've got to run over. So yeah, the research behind it as well. Like the funnest part for me, race directing, is yes, you get to welcome people across the finish line, but the funnest part is actually, you have to just go onto a map and pick a location, and you've got to make that location. Can it work with trails? Can you can you connect the dots? Like the 200-mile foot race, I had a rough idea, but I didn't know if there was trails I could connect up, and there's trails I could connect up, and it was just like, it's really quite cathartic when you're just building a route and you're like, oh yeah, and then you got to take them out today. It's just really, it's like almost like, I call it art. It's not like art, but it's just trying to incorporate cool things into a tough adventure.
Yeah. And you have to like make sure there's going to be places to set up checkpoints and everything as well, don't you?
Yeah, so checkpoints is something which you can either do like an outdoor one with like gazebos, preferably. You can use like a permanent structure like a village hall. Village halls are fantastic, and it's a good way of supporting the local economy as well, because we can pay them some money then to give back. But yeah, checkpoints, finish lines as well. I keep coming back to the Wild Horse because that is the biggest beast to try and organise. Like the finish line is Worm's Head in the Gower, which is National Trust land, so trying to work with like other bodies as well to get permission to do these things, that's a tough thing to do. You have to have those stakeholders and people you can approach, and you have to put in enough notice each and every year, and then you've got to go back and then see, actually, when can we release these events? When have we got permissions to do it? It's very, it's a fine juggling act, which we're still learning, but we'll continue to strive to be better.
Yeah. And then with the Pegasus ones, if you complete all of the events, that's the Pegasus Grand Slam, isn't it?
Yeah. So the Pegasus Slam is something which I think this year we had around 30 odd people sign up to it, and I think around 20 finished it in total. Amazing. It's six races across 6 months, so April to September. It ranges from 30 miles up to 50 miles. The toughest event is the 50 miler. That's towards the end of the season, so we spend the first 4 races building you up for the 5th, and then the 6th one is like a celebration, and you can finish it and enjoy it. Another side product from that is seeing the relationships which are forged between the people that are doing each and every event. It's amazing to see. You'll see these characters which you never thought would team up, but to get through a 50 miler in hurling winds and terrible rain, they will buddy up and get through, and then they'll get to the finish line. They've got that bond for life then. The friendships which they take from it is really lovely to see, and it's like, for me, that's the nicest thing across the season, when you see the Pegasus Slammers come back and they've built this community by the end of it. I think this year they all had their own WhatsApp group, they were chatting about it, so it's nice, it's really cool, and that's the Pegasus Slam.
Yeah, that sounds wicked. Just the fact that there's so many races, literally just like one a month for 6 months, and you have to do all of them and complete them to say that you've done it, like, that's an incredible idea. I love that idea.
It's nice. It's rewarding for the runners as well, and it helps them. It helps show them that they're capable of more than what they think they are, and we'll do it in a manner where they can use the events to train, and then when it comes to the 50 miler, they nail it.
Yeah. So with your events as well, have you personally like run all of the routes?
Yeah. So I think that's part of the. What's the word? It's a blessing to be able to say you've run them, but actually on the day of the event, you don't get to run them as such, because you don't get to participate with other runners, which I think in a few years' time, I'd love to just like do the race briefing and then say, cool, let's go, and actually start the race with people. I just really want to run. I want to experience the events as a runner, because obviously I create them, but I don't experience them as a runner, and I think that would be a good learning curve as well, and places where we could improve it. So yeah, I get to run the events, but not on the event date, and usually they're like broken down into sections, so you just go between to make sure that the land is safe to be able to run on, because obviously safety is one of the biggest concerns of being out there as well, especially on 200 milers. It's just making sure that what people are going over is passable, but passable at any time of day, because over 200 miles you can't predict when people are coming through. On a 30 miler you can kind of predict a window of time. On 120 hours it's difficult.
Yeah. Do you have any other wild races that you want to set up? Anything in the works?
My God, anything in the works? No, so yeah, I'd love to, like, the Cambrian Way, like, years ago, there was a BBC article, I don't know if you saw it, but like everybody's sharing on social media, everybody's saying they're going to go run it, and then I think like a handful of people have gone and run it since, but like maybe organising like a multi-day event which goes across the Cambrian Way, because that thing is brutal. Like, I've never run it, but I've run sections of it, and it's like the navigation on it is difficult in itself, but like the underfoot conditions, like could just be like anything from like mountaintops, like open moorland, but like really, really boggy where you just sink for like 2 miles. It's really it's a challenging route. It's not like Offa's Dyke. It's complete. They call it the connoisseurs route, so it's not like A to B. It's literally, and it will just take in the beautiful route. And I think it even goes past our house in Crickell, so like put a checkpoint in the house. That would be pretty cool.
Just come have a cup of tea with me, guys.
Yeah, I think Keris may say something about that. Other things like people always come to you with ideas as well, and it's like trying to rein it in. I know I'm the worst for like just going off and doing it, but like making note of those ideas and just maybe coming back to it one day when you feel that the market's ready for it. There's so many creative people in the industry. There's people like just your runners themselves, your volunteers that go, you should do this, you should do that. And you're like, I should do, but there's only like 12 months in the year, and I do want to have a little break between the races. I'm trying to think what else is there. What else do I want to set up? So something else we've launched for next year is experiences. So you can come along, and it's like a training weekend, whereby you'll come along on the Friday night. We'll take you out on a hike. We'll take you out for a run on the Saturday, and we'll take you out for a hike on the Sunday. So it's good training. It's a nice way to meet other people. We'll do workshops in between the running, so people can pick up certain skills. Like, I know it sounds stupid, but like packing a bag. Like, if you can pack a bag in the right way, you'll save yourself minutes during an event. And if you're pushing cut-off times, not hours, but if you're pushing cut-off times by minutes, it could be make or break for you. It's or if you're doing a multi-day event, it's knowing how to lay out your bag, running with poles, navigation, those sort of skill sets. That's something which we just sort of went, what could we do to help our runners?
Yeah.
And that's just what we came up with for next year. It's not necessarily the challenge. It's a nice weekend away with cool people.
Yeah. No, that sounds wicked. I think that's something that a lot of people would need if they're starting out their journey, because there seems to be like a big boom in ultra running, but people not necessarily knowing the skills you need to do an ultra.
Yeah, and I think you can blag your way through like a 30 miler perhaps, but if you want to actually enjoy it and know that you're not doing any permanent damage with certain things, you need to pick up certain skill sets. You also need a level of mental toughness as well, and like you said yourself, you did say yourself, but you identified a couple of times where you used your mental toughness to overcome certain things, and you can do that. But obviously if you can pick up certain skill sets and add it to that mental toughness, it's going to make you one hell of a competitor when it comes to doing these things.
Yeah. So with like challenges, then going back to you personally, what's next for you?
What's next for me? God, I need to think about what I've actually signed off with Keris.
You don't want to be giving anything away on the podcast.
Are you filming or?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to show you my phone now, but I'm going to I think that's the camera. Isn't it?
So there's a camera there, and there's a camera there as well.
So I'll read off what I've signed off with Keris, but I'll show you what I would like to do next year. So the bold stuff is what I've agreed to.
That's the signed off ones?
No. That's what I've signed up for. I'll tell you what I've signed off with Keris.
Oh, okay. There's quite a lot there.
There's quite a lot there, isn't there? And then the stuff below it is actually training to try and improve.
Yeah.
Obviously, you saw from the list and what I've got planned for next year. It's some really cool things, and I will mention them when I do get sign off from Keris. But you can
as soon as you've got permission, it's out there.
Yeah, pretty much. But we're trying to just. I think also a lot of people these days talk about doing stuff and they'll go out and do it and whatnot. I also want to maybe just go down the route of not saying I'm doing stuff and just do it.
Yeah.
And then eventually just maybe just put a photo of saying done it. And I just think like that would be a cool way of just maybe taking the pressure off you as well, in terms of just being able to go out and enjoy it and not have people go, oh, he's doing this one now, he's not doing that one. And it's just like a case of, having that surprise factor.
Yeah.
Just doing it for the fun of it.
I know I mentioned to you as well that Taylor, who started this with me, he does all these crazy challenges as well. And he's very much the sort of person that, because he's big into fundraising and stuff, he's always posting, like, I'm doing this thing. Like, the amount of posts I've seen about his Hamathon, like, honestly, it's an incredible thing. But, like, he's putting so much effort into these posts. He's live streaming his workouts. Wow. And, like, I can't do that. When I did my ultra, there was, like, most of the people that found out I was doing it found out the day before, because I was like, oh, just a reminder, I'm not in work tomorrow. And they're like, oh, what are you doing tomorrow then? And I was like, oh, I'm just running an ultra. They're like, what? I was like, yeah, I'm just doing it. Like, I'm not one, like, I'm rubbish at fundraising because I just don't talk about the things.
No.
At the end of, like, 2020, I did a thing. It was on my birthday, so my birthday's New Year's Eve, and I always go out and try and do something adventurous on my birthday because I just want to be out doing something, and usually it'll be like camping in the mountains or something. But that year I had COVID and I'd just recovered from my ankle break. I was literally fresh out of the boot, been in a boot for 6 months, and I was like, I'm isolating because of COVID. Like, I need to do something. I'm not wasting my birthday sat around in my flat. So I ended up doing 1,000 pull-ups in a day, just for a laugh. Like, no training went behind it. I was like, yeah, I'll just set a timer. I did 3 pull-ups a minute on the minute for 6 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and I, like you said, just straight afterwards, I just put up a picture of, like, the tally in my hands, and I was like, yeah, I've just done 1,000 pull-ups. That was cool.
Yeah, I kind of, it's like going against the grain a little bit, isn't it? Like doing these secret things maybe, and then just doing it for yourself, I think.
Yeah.
I do a lot of fundraising and stuff for charity, but also I'd like to do a few more things where I'm just doing it and there's no pressure, and I understand fundraising and why you would do something for charity, but maybe just going off and doing stuff secretly would be pretty cool.
Yeah. And looking at that list, you've got plenty to choose from, so...
Yeah, well, I've committed quite a few of them, and just need to get a sign off from Keris on maybe 75% of them.
The others you'll just try and sneak off for a weekend and do as a...
Yeah, or a family adventure, should we say, and get Keris and Nye's my little boy to come along, because I think that makes it more enjoyable as well. Like, I haven't done a multi-day challenge with Keris and Nye. I've done it with Keris before, but maybe incorporating it so like Nye's involved, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going to make him run with me, but like seeing them every few miles, which for me is like, that's a massive pick me up. It's like a real strength of mine. For me, it's like one of my core strengths of having Keris and Nye around. Like, I haven't had it where I've seen Nye much on these challenges, but with Keris, like every time I go into a checkpoint, I just know she's there. My speed will pick up. I know I'm getting closer, and you feel quite invincible when you come across people in your life who are like pillars and they help lift you up. She's just one of those things. And like I went to Leadville back in the summer, and I DNF'd, and I DNF'd halfway. Missed the cut-off by like 14 minutes, which it was one of those things. But I just know if like I'd had Keris there, and I'd imagine I would have picked up those 14 minutes over time and sped up a bit, and just from having that reassurance of seeing her. Because if you've gone to Leadville, which is over in Colorado, back to Wales, it's a big gap between you, and you've got time differences and stuff. So even if you're trying to communicate to somebody whilst you're suffering out there or doing one of these challenges, it's like there is a delay to that, and depending on the time of day, you may not get through to them as well. So yeah, with Keris, that is for me a massive strength of mine, having that relationship.
Yeah. So you've said about you've got Keris, you've got a son that you're looking after, you've got all these events that you're managing and everything. How do you train around that? Like, that's what most people struggle with, is having a life and training.
building it into like your everyday life, like just like making it a habit, I think makes it less intimidating and less. You have to have structure to training, of course you do, and cross training. I think just being able to tick off the big training, the training sessions each and every week. Like even if you scheduled for it to be at like 7 a.m. on a Monday and you don't do it, try and bet your best to get that session done at some point throughout the week. But yeah, making it a habit makes it a lot easier. There's a lot more time in the day than people realise. Like if you actually paid attention, that sounds really patronising. If you just like tracked how much time people spend on their phones, like people spend hours a day on their phone, and if you're training for something, just get on the phone and be limited on what time you're spending on your phone, and you'll find yourself with a bit more time. Going out in, like, some people sometimes don't go out if it's terrible weather. I don't enjoy going out in terrible weather, don't get me wrong, but I see the benefit of it. It's like a nutritional training, it's being out there in those elements, because when you are doing these challenges and you're 10 days deep into the Wales coastal path, you don't have a choice of whether you can go out and dance in the rain. You have to get out there and do it. So like doing it in training is like, for me, it's a big part of why you do it as well. It's being able to test your kit in those conditions. And having a really reasonable wife who will let you go out at certain hours a day to get stuff done, it's always a benefit. But no, it's turn it into a habit and it makes it easier.
Yeah. What does your training look like then?
At the moment it's quite nice because I'm sort of out of season. In the new year it would ramp up quite a bit, but you're referring to like peak weeks and when I'm going into a challenge?
Yeah, just generally, what does your week look like?
No, so it would be like 5 runs a week. This is when I'm training for something now. About 3 gym sessions a week and then a bit of cross training thrown in there. I know that's really generous and quite like vague in the description, but it does vary from like hill repeats to long runs to hikes. Like hiking, a lot of people tend to like don't think about hiking as a good way of training. It's brilliant because you can carry weight with you, you can do less impact on your joints. And if you've been out for like a long run, like tagging on like a hike after it or just going out in the afternoon, it's great because it makes you realise like what it feels like to have tired legs and still being able to move forward with that.
Yeah.
Strength work in the gym is like 3 days a week because I don't want to put on muscle mass, but I also want to have strong muscles to be able to like, they're functional muscles, they're muscles that you use during running basically to try and help go further, because when you're doing a 100-mile event you need muscles to be able to like push through, and if you don't have that core strength, like I find a lot of it comes from core as well. If you can have a strong core area, all your limbs come off the sides of it, you're going to benefit from stuff like that. The cross training, so like elliptical, so going on one of those machines where you're not doing impact on your joints. Cycling is brilliant because you can just go on a static bike. You've got a road bike, you can just go out. It's just a way of saving impact on the joints. Time on feet rather than distance. So like if you're going out for a run, like say you're going out for like 4 hours rather than a marathon, it's just a way of, for me, digesting it a little bit easier. And if it's actually for 4 hours, you can run off heart rate. Heart rate's something I do as well. So you run off your heart rate, you know how hard you're working, especially like if you're going into the freezing cold conditions of Iceland or the boiling hot temperature of Death Valley. Like monitoring your heart rate is crucial in terms of like performance and not over exerting and then dying at the side of the road, which I did 2022 I think DNF then. I've got a lot of DNFs as well, but I think that's part of the journey, and sometimes people, I don't know, think when you have a DNF it's the end of the world. Like I think when I originally started off and I got a DNF I thought it was the end of the world. It's really not. It's just a race. Like when I went to Death Valley in 2022, I almost died. I ended up in hospital with a thing called rhabdomyolysis. I got 97 miles into a 135 miler. Could have been a 100 miler, that would have been really gut wrenching. And the course doctor sort of took one look at me and was like, you need to go to hospital now. And luckily we were close to like one of the only hospitals around. They rushed me in. And yeah, they said I had rhabdomyolysis after a few tests and that my kidneys were failing. I was like 3rd stage kidney failure. I was completely out of it. They tried putting Keris on the phone to me, didn't even recognise who she was for like 30 seconds. The way they would do the blood test, they would take the blood out of my arm, give it to the janitor would drive like 3 hours up the road to a proper hospital, get the results and call back and say, yeah, he's not dying, he's fine, which was just crazy, like such a drawn out process, and it was the longest 24 hours of my life being in that hospital. But it also taught me that DNFs are not the end of the world. It's just another learning curve. It's another training run. That's the mentality I've got behind DNFs now.
Yeah. So that sort of leads me into what I was going to ask next.
Sorry.
I asked Graham the same thing, and that is just like, for someone that's going through like their first DNF or something that's like really hitting them hard, like they've had this goal in their head, whether it's their own challenge or a race, and they haven't managed to do it. Like, how do you deal with that?
I have a few like mantras which I've learned over the years. It takes years to be able to mentally place something and try and to box it and to sort of absorb it and digest it. I do have a few mantras that I go back to, and it's like, all I have is all I need. And it's just like, if I want to come back to this event, I will come back to it, and I will come back to it, and I'll do a better job of it. But it's learning, taking learnings from those things. Like, I think the fear of actually having that DNF, and DNF, you've achieved the DNF, and then having that fear of it, it's just trying to process it. And the only way you can process it is by going back to it, staring it right in the face, and like breaking it down into why did this come into a DNF. Once you start learning from it, that DNF turns into a training run because you're taking something from it. For me, that's what I've done with my biggest DNFs that I've achieved, if you want to call it that. It's just like, all I have is all I need, and as long as I can just keep working at that, I will come back to it at some point. I've got the list that I showed you. I've got a list of DNFs as well, which I will go back to one day, and I will correct those wrongs, because personally I just feel I need to do that. Like, my last experience in Death Valley, although I've run across it 5 times, was a DNF. So I want to go back, finish it one more time, get the hell out of there, and I'll finish on a positive note. Leadville, DNF that, I want to go back to there. You're trying to work out a way back to them, but only when your body's ready for it. Because you'll get a lot of people who will DNF and then rush back into the next best thing, which isn't necessarily the same challenge. It's just another, like, in 2019 I ran Badwater and finished it, the official race. I was like, for me that was the mountaintop of like my trail running at that point. It's not trail running, it's road running, but ultra running. And I finished that, and I was like, what's next? And I signed up to like a 250 miler long last, which is an amazing event. It's organised by a nice guy called Mark Cockbain, and really, really like experienced runner. But it's like November time, and it was 2 or 3 months after I'd finished Badwater. I was like, I can go into that and finish it, it'd be fine. DNF'd like 135 miles in. But like, it was like a downward spiral from there. I DNF'd that race, and I tried to find another event which I could then finish to make myself feel better, and it was completely pointless because I was just burying myself with trying to achieve these challenges which weeks and weeks before I hadn't even heard of, I wasn't interested in, but because I had that DNF, I was like going in this downward spiral of it. And a lot of people, like you said, I'm glad that you raised it. There's people out there who DNF, and it's how do you digest it? Everybody's different as well. So what I'm saying may not work for other people, but talking about it definitely does. So if you just talk about it and get it out there, you feel less ashamed about it. And yeah, again, it is a DNF. It's not like it's your life. It's just an event.
Yeah.
You'll always have the chance to go back if you want to.
Yeah. I know, like, for me, I get this feeling that there's a bit of a stigma around not finishing something, that, especially if you've told people you're going to do it, if you then don't finish it, there's that like, how am I going to tell them? Like, what am I going to do? Because when I did my ultra, like, everyone afterwards was like, how'd it go? Did you finish it? And like, I did finish it, but I can't imagine what I would feel like if I hadn't, and I have to be like, oh, no, I didn't. Like, how would they then react? Like, I struggle with that myself, but I know that that's not coming from a place genuine in me of like, I care if I finish it or not. It's like, I care what they're thinking about and having to explain it to them almost.
Yeah, no, I get your point completely with that, and I felt that myself previously, and it's just a DNF. I think I've got like 4 or 5 now. It's just like, I'll add it to that list and I'll come back and I'll tackle it, but people just, so it is very difficult. It's a difficult moment. I guess sometimes maybe like shame. You feel a bit ashamed that you've let people down. If you're doing it for charity and you've raised money for that charity, that's one positive you can take from it. Yeah, you've done some good. Like, if you haven't got to the finish line, that's not, like, there's a reason you've stopped.
Yeah.
That reason is usually, it's genuine. It's like, you've stopped on that day. It just wasn't your day. It happens to the best of people. Even if you look at the great runners out there, the people that are legends in the sport, they've got DNFs. Like, everybody's got DNF. Like, don't get me wrong, not everybody has a DNF, but like, the genuine people like do have DNFs in this sport, and it's a learning curve. Just keep going back to that point. It's a learning curve. Everything's a training experience. Even if you learn a lot more from your failures than you do your victories. That's another way of looking at it. I think if you can rip apart what went wrong, like, usually when you cross a finish line, you're like, that's it, yes, have you got that buzz, which is an amazing feeling, don't get me wrong, but it's almost like a heavy feeling, isn't it, when you DNF something and you don't want to go out and talk about it to people. And that's where you have to turn around and look at it and just go right back into it and figure it out and talk about it to people. Also, what I have learned with the experience when we got robbed and we wouldn't be able to go ahead with the challenges, sometimes people don't give a crap if you finish or not. Like, they are impressed, or they are wanting to help you as an individual.
Yeah.
And they want to help the charity which you're going for. The finish is just a side product of that. They just want you to be healthy. When I almost died last year, 2022, I'm getting confused now because we're coming to the end of 2023. That for me is just like, people didn't care about it. Nobody mentioned the DNF. They just mentioned about your health, and it's like, that's what it's being able to walk out. And if you can walk away from a challenge and make that decision to step out of it, it shows how strong you are mentally.
Yeah.
Because you can actually say when enough is enough, and you're in tune with your body. That is a core strength in this sport. So if you keep on getting injured, and you're not going to have that ability to keep coming. I think something I want to do is continue longevity in the sport, being able to continue this for years, because you never know when your last day is, do you? Let's be honest. So the more you can do, the more fun you can have and you can experience. So
that's something I really respected about Graham when I was talking to him the other day, was when we was talking about DNFs, he was like, yeah, you just got to reframe it. And then I was like, oh, do you ever get that feeling that it's something, like you were saying, like you haven't completed it and you sort of need to go back and get that closure? And he's like, no, I don't get that urge at all. Like, the way he frames it to himself is, he's like, I've tried, hasn't gone to plan, just move on, that's it.
I wish I was like that. But yeah, I'm agreeing on the whole DNF. It's not the biggest thing, but I do have, like I said, I've got that hit list of things I want to go back and correct.
Yeah.
And for me, that's just personally, and that's for myself to see that I can do these things. I'm still the person which I thought I was.
Yeah.
So sometimes I do contradict myself a lot.
Yeah.
The best lesson is don't listen to Rhys.
Something I noticed as well is, because I said I get those feelings of like shame almost when I haven't done the things I've said I was going to do. And I felt it was really apparent. Like, I went to do the Welsh 3000s. The first time I tried it, we did it in, I think it was November, and it was like awful weather conditions, as you can imagine. And my friend was like, we have to pack really light for this, only pack the essentials. So I was like, I've not done anything like this, like, what's the essentials? Like, I don't know. And he was like, oh, like a light waterproof jacket, like clothes and stuff. And I went out, like, literally, as he said, I had a, like, cycling jacket, like a windbreaker on. And I was like, yeah, like, this will be fine. And then, like, the weather was meant to be okay, and it wasn't. And we was camping at the bottom of Snowdon, and torrential rain, and then I got soaked through, and I didn't have spare clothes, and we got in the tent and everyone's getting changed into their spare clothes, and I was like, I thought we was packing bare minimum, like, you told me not to bring all of this stuff. They're like, oh yeah, but then, like, we thought it'd probably be best to, and I was like, and you didn't tell me. So then I'm like soaked through, and I'm sleeping in wet clothes, like huddled up in my sleeping bag, freezing, getting up at 4 a.m, and there's ice outside, and I just get up and I'm like, oh my God. We get to the top of Snowdon eventually, and I'm just sat there curled up in a ball, like getting hypothermia. Like halfway up we had to take a break because I just felt so faint, and I just laid down, and everyone's just like filming me and stuff, and I was like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. And I realised it was hypothermia. We get to the top, I warm up a bit and we start, but it had just drained me. So by the time we get to the second mountain section, I was done. So, like, I didn't finish that, and I felt bad because I was doing it with them. Like, I was meant to just be, like, an add-on to them, and I stopped them from doing it.
Right.
I felt awful. But then coming back from that, I realised that all the people that were giving me a bit of stick for not finishing it were people that would never do anything like that. Yeah. And I sort of learnt that you shouldn't listen to people that you don't respect, in a way. Like, if I'm not looking up to someone, like for you doing all these races, like I would look up to your achievements and I'd be like, wow. So if you turned around and was giving me stick, I was like, maybe it's earned. If it's someone that's like just down the pub drinking and stuff and they've never even gone out running in their life, if they're giving me stick about not doing the Welsh 3000s, I can take it with a pinch of salt.
What you've done there, you've just highlighted, like, you've obviously deconstructed it, what went wrong, whether you intended to or not. You just said, like, you had the wrong kit, you listened to other people, and then those people changed their mind and stuff. To me, that's like, that's the reason it all fell apart, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there was a chain of events off the back of that, and you've already digested that, you figured that out and broken it down, so that's literally half of the battle right there.
Yeah. I was very naive going into it, like I had no idea. My mate was like, yeah, I want to do the Welsh 3000s. I was like, I don't even know what that is, but I'll join you.
Not people know this, but when Puma sponsored us, I think the first day I went to start off running from Boston, I picked one that they gave us tons of like kit and like loads of shoes, and I turned up in like these white Pumas, and the guy from Puma was like, "Why are you wearing those?" I said, "Well, you gave them to me." He's like, "They're tennis shoes." I was like, "I'll be back now." I went back and changed the shoes. So naivety, that's why I went into the 2,000 mile run. I didn't know what I was getting myself in for, so I'm not the one to preach on stuff like that. But yeah, I think you live and you learn, and you sort of pick stuff up as you go along, and if you could learn from your mistakes, you'll be in a good way.
Yeah. Right, thinking about everything we've spoken about and all the other insane experiences you've had in your life, what is the one biggest piece of advice you would give to the listeners?
Don't burn all your matches. I had one chap cycling over in France doing like Alpe d'Huez, which is like the famous switchbacks.
Yeah.
It's the one which everybody wants to do when they go over there. And I had like a really, really cheap bike, like £300-400, and the people I was with had like their bikes were like thousands of pounds. Like, I was really out of my depth with kit, but not skill, like fitness and skills. Like I had that, didn't have the kit. And I remember I shot off on the Alpe d'Huez at the start thinking, I'll leave all these people behind, and then like, there's like 21 bends or so, within the second bend I was done. And like they all just gradually went past me, and then this one cocky chap who's actually the father of a sky rider, so he knows his stuff. So he was like, you've burnt all your matches. And I was like, and it took like the next 19 climbs for me to calm down before I got to the top. And I was like really annoyed at myself, but I took his advice and whatnot, and that is something which it is just like, don't burn all your energy. Try to reserve a bit, and you'll be like for when you truly bloody need it, because you'll never know when you're in a hypothermic situation. You never know when you're overheated. You need that depth to be able to go back into. And then the next day we all went out cycling, went up like the Galibier, which is like even tougher apparently. It's like 21k uphill. There's a lot of 21s in this story. And I got to the top and I finished like second out of like a group of like, I don't know, 12 of us. Like I was taking over people. I was on my cheap bike. I was like, really had like a great day. And this guy was with his best mate, and he was like, he could see me coming, and he was like kept looking over his shoulder, and he was like in front of me. And I went past the both of them. I didn't even say anything. I just went straight past the both of them. I was trying to prove a point. Went round the side of them, and then all I seen was the guy that had given me grief like ditched his mate so he could catch up to me and take over me and get to the top. And at that point I was like, I mean, I'm living rent free in your head right now. It's like, it was one of those things. It was like, I've really got to you. And got to the top of the climb, and he's like, wow, like good effort. I was like, yeah, I saved all my matches. And he laughed, and I went, no, I did save all my matches. And out the back I pulled out a box of matches and threw them at his feet, and he was like, and he saw the funny side of it. At the bottom of the mountain I'd gone to a shop and bought a box of matches basically to prove a point, and I managed to back it up, thank God. But yeah, that story alone has left me with that one bit of advice: is don't burn all your matches. If you're looking for other stuff, don't compare yourself to other people. Like, go out and find your own way with it. What works for one person may not work for you, and that's perfectly fine. Everybody's different, and you'll find your way. Just get out there and experience it.
Yeah, incredible. Well, thank you for coming on. Really
pleasure.
Appreciate you coming on. Been really looking forward to this one.
I've been looking forward to it. Thank you for being so understanding with me messing around times. And
No
stuff,
worries.
So.
Right, thank you.
Sweet.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Adventure Athletes podcast. If you like this episode, make sure you follow us on Instagram, Spotify and YouTube, and share our content around. It helps more than you can ever imagine. Now, if there's a person in particular that you want to hear from or a topic that you want us to cover, just drop us a message, let us know in our DMs, and we'll make sure we try and reach out to the relevant people to cover that topic for you. We're always trying to make content that you guys want to listen to. We have just dropped our website, it's adventureathletes.co.uk, and you can go on there to find out the range of different services we offer. So we have sports massage, different training programs, and personal training, both online and in person, that you can sign up to on the website. So make sure you go and check us out at adventureathletes.co.uk.